They don't break you with violence anymore. They break you with doubt. They make you question your instincts until obedience feels like your idea. But here's what Machiavelli understood. Power isn't stolen. It's surrendered, piece by piece. And unless you learn to spot the trap, you'll never feel free again. This is not a lesson. It's a weapon, because today we reclaim your power. In this video, you will learn 7 powerful things that will change your entire life. Number 1. The illusion of powerlessness. You weren't born powerless. You were born with a fire. But somewhere along the way, it was dimmed, not extinguished, just managed, not broken, just bent. And that's how it begins, not with chains, but with correction. A voice says, "Don't speak like that. Don't be so intense. Don't make others uncomfortable." And you, hungry to belong, obey. You sit still when you want to move. You smile when you want to question. You apologize for thinking too sharply, for walking too boldly, for being too much. Until one day, you forget what it felt like to move without permission. That is the illusion of powerlessness. It's not the truth. It's training. A slow drip conditioning that starts in childhood, where discipline is replaced by submission, where confidence is mistaken for arrogance, where raw energy is sedated, not sharpened. Your school didn't reward curiosity. It rewarded compliance. Your family didn't model strength. They taught you not to make a scene. And the media, it didn't reflect your power. It caricatured it, ridiculed it, drugged it, and renamed it toxic. So what did you do? You shrank. Not because you lacked power, but because you were told your power was dangerous. You learned that guilt earns approval, that silence earns safety, that hesitation earns acceptance. You began rehearsing weakness because it kept you liked, but it also kept you small. This is not a flaw in your character. It's not a weakness. It's design. Psychological warfare disguised as socialization. A society built not to free you, but to domesticate you. And here's the Machiavellian truth. Men are more often ruled by fear of punishment than by love. A virtue, your power was never destroyed. It was redirected, traded for peace, sold for validation, buried under politeness and programmed guilt. But the illusion is cracking. Because you feel it, don't you? That pressure in your chest. That whisper that says, "There's more in you." That's not rebellion. That's your power waking up. And the first step to reclaiming it is realizing you were never powerless. You were just taught to forget. Number 2. The hidden systems that neuter you. You've been told your whole life that the world is fair, that the rules are for your protection, that obedience equals goodness, and rebellion equals danger. But what if that was never true? What if the systems built to shape you were never designed to sharpen you, only to soften you? From the moment you entered a classroom, the conditioning began, not with whips, but with policies. Raise your hand, sit quietly, follow the rules. If you questioned, you were a problem. If you asserted, you were disruptive. If you refused, you were labeled difficult. They didn't teach you how to think. They taught you how to ask permission. This wasn't education. It was grooming. Training men to trade their power for approval, their leadership for likability. By the time you reach adulthood, the leash is invisible, but permanent. You walk into work and learn a new set of rituals. Smile without sincerity. Apologize for your ambition. Watch your tone. Watch your posture. Watch your words. You become fluent in fake virtue, just to survive the performance. HR culture doesn't reward truth. It rewards compliance. Corporations don't promote clarity. They promote comfort. Power is never measured by what you can do, only by how soft you can seem to be doing it. Meanwhile, the media whispers it's gospel. Real men cry more. Assertiveness is aggression. Disagreement is violence. And if you dare challenge this narrative, you're labeled toxic, problematic, cancelled, not for what you did, but for how you made others feel. This is not justice. This is psychological castration, the slow removal of edge, spine, and strategy. Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you are. The modern world punishes real strength, but it rewards the performance of weakness. It doesn't outlaw your fire. It shames it. It doesn't silence you. It gaslights you into silencing yourself. This is how power is stripped in the 21st century. Not with force, but with emotion. Not with war, but with guilt. Not with laws, but with likes. You're not just being managed. You're being rewritten, and the most dangerous part, you think it's normal. Number 3. The psychology of helplessness. Helplessness is not a personality flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not a lack of will. It's a system installed into you. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. And it begins before you even notice it. Martin Seligman, a pioneer in behavioral psychology, once experimented. He placed dogs in a cage, and no matter what they did, they were shocked. No escape. No control. Just pain. Eventually, something terrifying happened. Even when the door was opened, the dogs didn't run. They had learned one thing. No matter what I do, I lose. This is not just science. This is your story. You apologized when you weren't wrong. You stayed silent when your instincts screamed. You gave in, not because you agreed, but because resistance always led to punishment. Over time, your nervous system encoded a new rule. Standing up equals pain. So now, you flinch before you speak. You filter every word through safety. You seek permission to exist. You call it maturity. They call it respect. But in truth, it's programming. You've been trained to betray your voice before the world does it for you. You were not always like this. There was a time you were direct, a time you believed your presence carried weight. But now, you're the nice guy everyone forgets, the father no one listens to, the man in the meeting who gets cut off, and then apologizes for being too assertive. And here's the darkest part. You think it's your fault. But Machiavelli had a warning buried in The Prince. He who builds on the people builds mud. Translation: if your strength is based on social approval, you have no strength. So, what's the first move? Awareness. To recognize that guilt is not your compass, that people-pleasing is not a virtue, that your silence is not peace. It's surrender, and until you reclaim your voice, you'll keep apologizing for having won. Number 4. Machiavelli's laws of power perception. Power doesn't live in your fists. It lives in the eyes of those watching you. Because perception isn't just part of power. It is power. Niccolo Machiavelli knew this long before Instagram, before politics became performance, before men were taught to trade their image for acceptance. In The Prince, he wrote something dangerous, something most never understand. A man must learn to not be good, but appear good. Appearances, not truth, not purity, not heartfelt apologies, but optics, because in power, being isn't enough. You must be seen the right way. And this is where most modern men collapse. They think they need to explain their strength. They over-apologize to soften their presence. They perform humility, as if shrinking earns respect. But here's the Machiavellian law. Don't explain your power, own it. Stop translating your silence into passivity. Stop turning your confidence into a TED Talk. Your strength is not up for public debate. It doesn't need a PR team. It needs posture. Perception is strategy. Want to be trusted? Look composed. Want to be feared? Be still when others panic. Want to be respected? Speak less. But when you do, make it land. The world is full of noise. Men explaining, defending, begging for validation. But the strategist understands something deeper. Control the frame, and you control the outcome. Psychologically, this is called frame dominance. He who sets the emotional tone wins. So instead of saying, "I didn't mean to offend," say, "That wasn't the goal, but I stand by it." Reframe. Don't collapse. Own your posture. And you own the narrative, because in today's world, every moment you look unsure, they will fill in the blank. And what they fill it with is weakness. So here's your rule. Never let them see you break. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. Because strength isn't just what you carry inside. It's how convincingly you wear it outside. And in the world of power, the silent man who never flinches always speaks the loudest. Number 5. The trap of apology culture. They say an apology is the mark of a strong man. But what if that's the lie? What if, in today's culture, apologies aren't about redemption, but obedience? Because look closely, the public apology has evolved. It's no longer a gesture of sincerity. It's a performance, a ritual, a televised ceremony of humiliation, not to forgive, but to break you. Scroll your feed. A celebrity chokes up, apologizing for a joke from 10 years ago. A CEO weeps in front of cameras for using the wrong word. A politician kneels, not because he means it, but because the mob demands blood. This isn't accountability. This is a power transfer. And Machiavelli saw it centuries before social media existed. He warned, never do your enemy a small injury, because a small injury lingers, it festers. It reminds the world and your subconscious that you can be wounded and will bleed on command. That's what a forced apology is, a self-inflicted wound, done under pressure, and dressed up as virtue. But what's the result? You apologize once. They don't forgive. They circle back again and again. Now you're not a man correcting a mistake. You're a target, because every public surrender invites predators. Every flinch signals weakness. This is not about right or wrong. This is about strategy. Machiavelli didn't say never apologize. He said, never apologize unless it buys you power. If the apology resets the board, use it. If it disarms critics long enough for you to make your next move, play it. But if it's only meant to shrink you, to make you crawl, don't bend. Because the moment you say, "I'm sorry," not from clarity, but from fear, you're not resolving a conflict, you're signaling submission. And once they've seen you kneel, they'll never let you stand again. Number 6. The Strategist's solution. Reframe, redirect. Arise. There comes a moment where the man decides, "I'm done explaining, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity," because real power doesn't argue, it positions. The modern world demands reactions, fast, emotional, self-erasing. But the strategist knows, he who reacts loses. That's why the path forward isn't louder. It's cleaner, sharper, stoic, strategic. Step 1. Reframe. When attacked, don't collapse, shift the frame. They say, "You're offensive." You respond, "I'm direct." They say, "You're too intense." You say, "I value clarity." You don't deny their experience. You don't feed it either. You reshape it without giving up your spine. This is psychological aikido. They throw emotional force. You redirect it through language, tone, posture, because the moment you control the story, you stop being a defendant and become the narrator. Step 2. Redirect. You move from emotion to outcome, from moral confusion to tactical clarity. They say, "Your words hurt." You say, "Let's focus on what it achieved." No guilt, no groveling, just results. Because men who lead don't waste energy proving their heart. They prove their effect. And if that doesn't work, step 3. Rise, not with volume, not with force, but with presence. You don't defend. You don't justify. You embody. You say less, but mean more. You move slower, but cut deeper. You become the man who walks through guilt untouched. That's when the world starts to change around you. Because when they can't shake your center, they lose their grip. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands, unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That's the strategist. He's not cold. He's controlled. He's not detached. He's deliberate. He doesn't kneel to noise. He moves in silence until his presence redefines the room. Because this isn't about ego. It's about sovereignty. And the strategist knows the only thing more powerful than a man who can win a fight is the man who doesn't need to prove it. Number 7. Rebuilding internal power. The Stoic Reframe. The loudest man in the room is usually the weakest. We've been trained to think power is noise. The raised voice, the viral rant, the emotional outburst. But Stoicism, the philosophy of emperors, tells us the opposite. Power isn't declared. It's developed in silence. Not in arguments, but in alignment. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in words, but in discipline. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, faced betrayal, war, and plague, yet every night he returned to his journal. He didn't rant. He reflected. When you wake in the morning, he wrote, "Remind yourself, you will meet people who are arrogant, selfish, deceitful, but they are part of the world, and they cannot harm you unless you let them inside your mind." This is sovereignty, not control over others, but unshakable control over yourself, because the modern world is full of bait, clickbait, guilt bait, rage bait. They want your reaction, because your reaction is their control. But the Stoic man doesn't react, he reframes. He doesn't collapse, he corrects. He doesn't prove his power, he builds it in motionless fire. This is not passivity, it's presence, and presence can't be faked. The man who doesn't need to shout terrifies those who live in noise. Because true masculinity isn't explosive, it's composed. It isn't desperate for attention, it's immune to it. That's the Stoic reframe. Don't beg for power. Don't perform it. Become it. Quietly. And let the world adjust. Number 8. Final message. You were not born to bow. You were not born timid. You were not born ashamed. You were not born to kneel. But somewhere along the path, they taught you obedience and called it virtue. They fed you narratives of guilt, dressed in the costume of kindness, whispered that your instincts were dangerous, that your masculinity needed to be monitored, medicated, managed. But let's get something straight. You weren't broken. You were trained to break by systems that fear clarity, by people who gain when you doubt yourself, by a world that thrives on compliant men who confuse weakness with decency. Now ask yourself, who does your silence serve? Who does your shame protect? Whose game are you still playing? You see, this wasn't about morality, it was about management. You weren't being educated. You were being conditioned. Every forced apology, every moment of unnecessary guilt, every time you swallowed your truth to make others feel safe. That wasn't you being good. That was you being rewritten. But Machiavelli never bent to fantasy. He saw reality, raw and blood-stained. He knew the world didn't reward the most virtuous. It rewarded the most aware, the most calculated, the most unshakably themselves. So what now? Now you stop bowing, not by shouting, not by lashing out, but by refusing to collapse. No more emotional hostage negotiations. No more begging to be seen. No more apologizing for the fire in your soul. You are not here to soothe the herd. You are here to build, lead, and dominate with calm, with stillness, with presence so sharp it makes lies unravel. This is your rebellion, not chaos, but controlled defiance, not noise, but clarity, not approval, but principle. Because the man who knows who he is cannot be programmed, cannot be guilted, cannot be moved by noise. And if you must apologize, then do it once to the man you used to be, and then outgrow him, fade to black. No slogan, just code, think, move, dominate.